If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and this is one of the big ones I was wanting to talk about that I knew was coming out in 2023, and that is the latest studio offering from the one-man blackened speed thrash metal project from Scotland, Hellripper, with Warlocks Grim and Withered Hags. So this is the third studio album from Hellripper, and their second one on Peaceville Records, which, yeah, pretty big metal label for Hellripper to be on, being label mates with two legends in Autopsy and Darkthrone. And of course, one of the big reasons why I was looking forward to this album is because I am good friends with the mastermind behind Hellripper, James McBain, who I've had on the Horseman podcast once, and set to have him on a future episode talking about our top 10 first wave / proto black metal albums, because why the hell not? It'd be a fun discussion. So James, if you're watching this, we'd love to have you on the show here in the next month and do that episode, because it would be a lot of fun. But yeah, so Warlocks Grim and Withered Hags, new album. Well, why don't we go ahead and just dive right on into it. I will say the first thing I want to point out is, of course, with Hellripper, you know, just this perfect blend of black metal, speed metal, thrash metal, and classic heavy metal all over the map. Pretty much all throughout, like, everything Hellripper has done, whether it's full lengths, EP, splits, compilations. You pretty much get a hodgepodge of those four sounds in Hellripper's music. And right out of the gate, you kick the album off with The Knuckle Lave, which this, as well as a couple other tracks like The Cursed Carrion Crown and Mester Stored Worm, very thrash metal centered, or at least some thrash metal moments show up on here. And with the Knuckle Lave, right out of the gate with that thrash influence, but with some like cool, evil harmonies going on in the riffage. And as James described it in the track by track, you get some like really cool blackened arpeggio moments in the verses. Some blackened tremolos even show up here. And even in the bridge, you get some of that Darkthrone and some Celtic Frost riff mastery going on in the bridge of the song. And then pretty much most of the songs on the album, tracks like I the Deceiver, Goat Vomit Nightmare, which that is a hell of a song title right there, The Hissing Marshes, and Poison Womb, The Curse of the Witch, are very much in that blackened speed metal vein that you really get on most Hellripper songs, is that more blackened speed vibe, as opposed to blackened thrash. Like, a few songs have the blackened thrash vibe, but about half of this album is blackened speed metal oriented. And I the Deceiver starts off with this like almost Metallica inspired riff, and then you get like a dark melodic lead line before it just unleashes into like speed metal fury, kind of similar to Exciter a little bit, or even early Sodom, like in the Sign of Evil era Sodom, and having that blackened atmosphere on top. And even like the atmosphere of the very end of the track kind of feels like you're being pulled into the pits of hell, pretty much. The title track, now this song is quite unique because this is one of the slower tracks on the album, and I think it is the slowest Hellripper song and one of the longest. It's over 7 minutes. And it starts off with these like dark and almost borderline somber melodies. But some of the riff work going on here sounds like a bit of like a slower Slayer track, maybe a little Black Sabbath, and even like Dark Saga era Iced Earth. I heard a little bit, at least to my ears. But you do get a really cool Celtic Frost groove and riff that shows up as well. And even during one of the dark melodic sections, James's scream just gets absolutely, like, almost like it's going off the rails kind of vibe, like he's in pain and anguish almost. And even the very end of the track gets a little bit folky, and that folk inspiration doesn't stop there. Like in Goat Vomit Nightmare, the following track, you do get a cool folky acoustic line before it builds into a guitar solo. So that was really cool. Now, the Cursed Carrion Crown, again, brings back the thrash. And even some vibes, like there's a couple of vibes, or not a couple of vibes, but a couple of moments on some riffs feel like Testament, but then when it gets like really fast and unwieldy, kind of feels like Obsessed by Cruelty and Persecution Mania era Sodom to me. And you even get a huge scream, like this high note scream from James, sounding like he's trying to channel his inner Tom Araya a little bit. And even this, as well as the final track, Mester Store Worm, you get an Iron Maiden gallop, and I always love hearing an Iron Maiden gallop on any album. And then you even get a big blast beat and death growl in here too. Now, the Hissing Marshes, the following track, I love how it starts off with an awesome bass line that feels like an evil version of Ace of Spades, and even that vibe is felt in the chorus. So if you're a big Motorhead fan, you will dig the choruses on this track because it very much feels like an evil Motorhead Ace of Spades. But the verses still really just maintain the blackened speed metal factor. And then Poison Womb, The Curse of the Witch, little more sleazy than, actually a lot more sleazy than pretty much the rest of the songs on the album. Kind of like Midnight a little bit, but with just a little bit more blackened atmosphere. And also one of the coolest lyric lines I've heard in a while, where in the chorus, "Rise from the cunt of the beast." Like, I remembered hearing that on teasers that James was dropping on his Instagram and in his YouTube channel through the shorts, and I was like, I gotta find out where this lyric pops up on the album, and it pops up on here, and it was awesome. Now, the final track I'm going more in depth about, Mester Store Worm, because it's 8.5 minutes, the longest Hellripper song ever, and there is a lot going on here. Starts off more doom metal oriented, but with a creepy melody. Then it gets back to the thrash, but in this case more like early Razor or early Destruction a little bit. The pre-verse sections do a really good job at building tension into the choruses that just have very much a traditional black metal feel, like the tremolo riffs, the blast beats, felt like classic black metal to me. And even, again, more wonderful acoustic lines even pop up on here before you get back into a Celtic Frost, Dark Throne groove and riff, but with death growls, almost like even maybe a little Obituary-ish because of the death growls being on there, but because, you know, Obituary being inspired by Celtic Frost and even Dark Throne inspired by Celtic Frost, very much felt like a mixture of all three bands in this groove and the riff work. And with death growls on top, felt like a death metal section. Then even briefly, a couple times you get a Testament-inspired riff again, back to the Maiden gallop, even clean guitars towards the end of build to the climax, the end of the song, which was huge. So yeah, that song really showcasing a lot of different songwriting chops from James. Now, like I said, pretty much you get, like, pretty much throughout most of this album, you get these, like, classic heavy metal harmonies and melodies, mostly reminiscent of Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. Tracks like the Knuckle Lave, the Cursed Carrion Crown, and Mester Store Worm, more thrash metal inspired, and even maybe a little bit of, like, early Cannibal Corpse, particularly in the Knuckle Lave on some of the riffs. It gets into, like, some early, like, Eaten Back to Life era Cannibal Corpse. But half of this album, like Eye the Deceiver, Goat Vomit Nightmare, The Hissing Marshes, and Poison Womb, very much in that blackened speed metal vibe that you come to know from Hellripper. But yeah, the influences, you can hear them right out of the gates with bands like Darkthrone, Metallica, Megadeth, Midnight, Venom, Early Bathory, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Motorhead, all throughout. Now the leads I want to talk a little bit about, because I love how a lot of these leads were structured. Like, it might be formulaic, but it works. It's like most of the songs will have two different lead sections. The first lead section is more atmospheric and has more feeling to them. And then the second lead is where you get into like real shred, but with some classic metal melodies and chops on top of all that shred. Like in the Knuckle Ave in particular, harkens back to like Dave Mustaine and Jeff Waters type of solos going on there, but with like spurts of melody. Now the bass, very much following along to the guitars, which I totally get, but I do love how the beginning of Hissing Marshes gives that moment of like a Lemmy influence, like, oh my god, we miss you, Lemmy. And then James's vocals, very wild and chaotic with the screams, sometimes gets even more chaotic than usual, but more death growls going on here and showcasing some nuance. Though one thing I would have loved to have heard in terms of the vocals, maybe a line or two of like more melodic singing, because I feel James is capable of doing melodic vocals. After all, he did like borderline melodic vocals on a Running Wild cover on the Black Arts and Alchemy EP, and it was killer. So maybe on the next album, maybe we can get some clean, quote-unquote clean vocals from James. Not saying it's a bad thing he doesn't do cleans, it just would have been kind of cool to hear that. But I love his screams, his death growls, also because he also has a death metal project called Lord Rod, which I would love to hear a full length out of that, because that's some like really good, almost Swedish death metal right there. But overall, I really can't find anything to really complain about this album. This album's a journey of classic metal, thrash metal, speed metal, black metal, but with some new influences kind of coming in and retaining the old influences. I fucking love this album. This is a 10 out of 10. And before anybody says I'm kissing ass to James because he's my friend, listen to the album and you'll understand why I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. So yeah, this is blackened speed thrash done right. Like, holy shit. And my copy of this album will be here in a few days, so it's gonna be a perfect addition to the collection. But yeah, fucking love this album, and you should love it too. Of course, this is just my opinion. What did you guys think of Warlocks Grim and Withered Hags by Hellripper? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, you people, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.